go through the costs of revenue problem here, and we may bring in some scratch work from time to time on the page to the right, but first I'm going to start with the big page and see what we can do to model the problem above right here. And this is a good way for you to check your answers. So, I know some of you probably already got this, but my sense is it wouldn't be bad just to kind of refresh, especially for kids that are absent today, to have a quick refresh. So one of the goals is when you see something like 80%, you want to be able to start doing that in your head. So for example, one of my strategies was, you guys see my pencil, little marker anywhere? Oh, there it is. One of my strategies that I was using was into each cell, just kind of writing like what 10% of the number in the cell was. So 10% of 10 is 1, right? And then to get 80%, we would just times by 8. And so this would be $8. And then same thing down here, 10% of 55 would be 5.5. So to get 80%, I would just multiply 5.5 by 8. And I really encourage you to do that in your head also. Like a lot of you might just say 5 times 8 is 40, and half of 8 is 4, and get 44. And you're actually just doing that with mental math, So that would be great if you could get that just with mental math. Okay. And so let's just look at this one. 10% of 125 is what? 12.5, right? So you're going to multiply 12.5 times 8. So 8 times 12. What's 8 times 12? I know you know this. 96, right? And then do half. 8 times a half. 4. Do you understand what I'm doing there? Yeah? So that's 100. So check your work, and did you guys get those numbers? Yeah. Thumbs up for everybody? So that's good. So we want mastery on that. Yeah.
Is that 1 to 44 or is that 40? Because there seems to be another.
Oh, it's just my dollar signs looks kind of funny there, doesn't it?
Yeah.
How's that? 100? It's not. It's just 44. And then, so the easiest thing to do next, I think, is commission. Because the commission is just 25% of the markup. So the quick way to do 25% is just divide by 4. You guys know that? Yeah. And so I would do that. Like the problem is you can't always do that, right? Because if it's not 25%, you would have to do like some of our finding percent strategies. You know what I mean? Like with a ratio table or equation or a ratio proportion. But I mean, if it's easy, keep it easy. So a fourth of $8, you're basically just dividing by 4 here because it's 25%. It's because it's 25% that we're dividing by 4. You don't always divide by 4. And an example would be up here. We did find 10% right here because we needed commission of 20%, and so we just doubled it. Does that make sense? So it's a little bit different each time, but if it's simple, keep it simple. And so I'm going to take each one of these numbers here in the buying price column and divide them by 4. So that's $2. And then 44 divided by 4 is $11. And this is $25. So that's your commission. And remember, commission's like what the person that made the sale gets. It's a pocket that money. And they might even have a salary too. And so we talked a lot about profit yesterday. Did anybody like figure out the shortcut on profit? Yeah, what is it, Erin?
If you multiply commission by 3.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, so true, in this problem, it works on the first row. Which doesn't, so let me rephrase that. The answer to your response, I mean, that's actually correct. So it's just not what I was expecting. So let me ask you up here, because that pattern doesn't always work. Did anybody see the shortcut up here? What was it, AJ?
Well, I mean, I know one way you could do the shortcut is take the commission and have the mark, and then take that away from the markup, and you get the.
Right, because you see, this is how much like the business marked the cost up. So they get $30 extra, for example, right here. But then they're going to pay out the salesperson $6. So the profit is the difference between those two. Do you guys see that? Even though there's a longer way to think about it, we talked about the whole process yesterday. But in the end of the day, if they mark something up $8, they're going to get that $8 extra. And then they're going to pay their salesperson $2. So they get $6. And the pattern you saw, Erin, was correct, but it was somewhat of a pattern only to this chart, not to all the time. So what's the all the time pattern for profit? Markup minus commission. You see that? Okay. Everybody here good on that one? Okay. So then that makes this 33. And then it makes this 75. So you notice I'm going through the table not in order. I'm trying to do what's easiest for me first. And I just keep doing all the easy things until I run out of easy things, and then I do the harder things. Okay? So now I have to get the selling price. That actually isn't hard on this table either. So it's just what I thought of first. In other words, like just what came to mind first. Selling price is just, remember you add these together. So I feel like what I'm hearing from you guys is this problem you feel pretty confident about. But in order to do the next problem, I just really needed to verify that we had a lot of confidence on this problem. So we're there? Okay, good. Okay, so for the next problem, we're not going to focus on everything. We're going to just focus on row 1 first. Okay? So the markup here in row 1, this is important, is 80% of the buying price. So basically, like, it's kind of like what we had done in the homework. The total value is $48, and that represents 80% of the buying price. But I want to know what the whole buying price was. So could I get to like 10% here? What would I have to do? Yeah. Divide by 8. So there's lots of ways to get to 10%. That's just one way. That gives me 10%. So if $6 is 10%, what's 100%? 60. So let's see, thumbs up, thumbs down on that. Okay. So if you have that, I know you could do the rest of it because you did that in the table above. How many people did not get that 60? So you got row 1 pretty well? Okay. So then the selling price you would have had 108. Is that correct? And then the commission, we are going to just divide the markup by 4, right? So 12. And then the profit is 48 take away 12, which is $36, right? Okay. It turns out that this one is pretty hard. So let's go to this one. How can the seller commission help me? Somebody new, somebody I haven't heard from. Like if you know, yeah, what do you think, Ainsley?
Well, if it's, if commission is 25% of the markup.
Right, this is 25% of the markup. Right, so instead of going from the markup to the commission and dividing by 4, going backwards, what do you have to do with that? Yeah.
So I did a ratio table,
Mm-hmm.
and I did $14 dollars and 40 cents over 25% basically.
Okay.
And then I divided it by 4.
And then Ainsley, what'd you do? So that works. You know that this represents, sorry, that's a 40, 25%. Did you divide it by 4?
I meant to say I multiplied it.
You multiply by 4, right? So if you multiply 1440 by 4, that's a 4. What'd you get, Anna?
I got $57.60.
Right. And Ainsley, were you going to do anything different?
Not really.
So you basically, you just multiply by 4, right? And once you have that $57.60, now you know that's 80%, right? So you could make a new table. You could say $57.60 is 80%. So this is your total now. That's your percent now. And we wanted 10%, so I could divide by 8. So this gives me 10%, and if I divide by 8, so there is a little long division here, although some of you can probably do this with mental math. 8 goes into 57, 7 times, so 56. 7.2, right? Because we have a 0 here, right? So 10% is $7.20, but we want what? 100, right? Because we're trying to go this way. Okay, so we know the 57 represents 80%, so 10% is $7.20, so 100% is 72. Okay? Now we're not going to worry about row 3 or row 4 because we were just doing rows 1, 2, and 3, so now we're left with the middle one. Erin. Can you talk to me about it? Yeah.
So you know the selling price?
Yep.
And you know that the buying price is 100%?
Right.
The markup is 80%. So you multiply the selling price by 180%.
Okay, so the selling price is 180% of, so like, yeah, it's 180%. Does that make sense? So she's got that right. Okay, so we could represent the selling, is that what I heard you say? So that 252 is 180%. And we want to get it down to 100. That was the hard part last night, right? I bet a lot of people were stuck on that. Okay, so I'm going to do that in the dual page so you can kind of see the chart still. So just to clarify what Erin's idea was, um, she tells me that the selling price was $252, but it represents 180% of what we want. So we want to get this down to 100. Maybe we could divide by 18 if we're lucky. I mean, if we divided by 18, it would be okay, right? Because I would get a 10 here. I mean, a 10 here. I just don't know if it's going to divide evenly, but it doesn't matter because if I get the 10 there, I'm going to just multiply by what? 10 to get the 100. So I don't really need to worry if it's not a pretty number. I'm just going to take that 252 and I'm going to divide it by 18. I mean, I like it when it works out nicely, but if it doesn't, it's not the end of the world. But it actually works out nicely. So 18 times 4 is 72. So this is 14, so this is 140. And so over here, we get 140. Because I got the 100%. Now I have to do the markup. So I could do it, I knew 10%, right?
Markup can't just subtract 140 from 250.
Absolutely. Now there's more than one way. I was going to say, but I like your way. I just didn't actually think about it. I was going to say I'll just multiply by 8. But your way is probably quicker. I just kind of got set in my way. And so we'll look at your way, and I think we can check our answers that way, right? So 8 times 14 is 32 and 80, right? If I use mental math. So that's where she's saying 112. But let's see what Erin said is, like, I already know the selling price, and I know the buying price, so, I mean, Erin's idea is a little slicker than mine here. So, but we both get the same answer. So I actually feel great about that because I got to check my work. Okay. And then commission's easy, divide by 4. So half of 112 is 56, and half of 56 is 28. And then remember profit, we just look at markup minus commission. Okay, so 112 minus 28. Yeah. So $82. Did I do that right?
I paid for it.
Oh, it's 112. Thank you. $84. Let me clean that up a little bit. All right. So that's a lot of information. So the reason I wanted to record that is it might make sense right now, but if you get stuck, you could replay just the little part you need.